Aloha, back again. We're going to give it another go. The internet or the computer, I don't know what was happening, but the video was not coming up. But here I am now. So, is everybody ready for a tale? So, I was thinking about this today. I watched a video about Tony Robbins talking. It was actually from ClickFunnels, and they're talking about their rock bottom. The one guy was saying that he was sleeping in someone's closet and halfway in the closet on an air mattress that didn't hold air. And it got me thinking. I'm like, yeah, I've really been at my rock bottom. But before I tell you about how I got to my rock bottom, before I tell you about what my rock bottom was, there's this place where I had kind of like collected my thoughts, and I was looking, and I was working to restore an old building, a multi-hundred-year-old building in Hawaii. And I was up on the scaffolding. This was in Hilo, and just a beautiful old building, the Palace Theater building. And there was a huge homeless population in Hilo. And they were quite clever. It was actually quite interesting watching them with their shopping cart trains or their wagons or packs, and some of them just had bags, others just kind of rolled blankets. Each of them had their own cleverness in how they carved out their life. One guy that was pretty cool, he just had a couple bags and a blanket, and he would hang out in, I don't know what it's called, not a vestibule, but there's an awning that came out and it kind of went into the building, and he was pretty sheltered from the elements. I believe the shop or whatever it used to be was closed, and he just kind of carved out a life. And he would just light up and blaze all day. He'd pop his shoes off and just kick back and enjoy Hawaii. And I was like, why would you do that? Why would he not aspire for anything greater? And I actually kind of flashed into his consciousness, and I got the essence of his life. I'm like, oh, now I see why he does that. He had this freedom. He didn't have to worry about anything. Everything he needed was taken care of, and it wasn't comfortable, but it was freeing. Not having all the material things in life, not being on that hamster wheel of the career. And it was a pretty amazing experience for him. I don't remember his name. I just remember his face and his energy. Always had a smile. It's usually pretty high, usually. But it was interesting to see all the homeless people and how creative they got and how they carved their life out of nothing. And a lot of it was substance abuse. A lot of it was mental illness and entity attachments. The one, she had demons on her. Like, you didn't want to get next to her, and she'd just start screaming. You could hear her from blocks away just screaming at people. Same crowd every day, and you'd watch them, and I would sit up there and watch them on the scaffolding and go, okay, if I was in their position, how would I do it? I definitely wouldn't do a shopping cart train. I would have a pack, and I'd build a loadout similar to what I had in the Marine Corps. A good pack to hold my gear, plenty of food, water, tent, maybe not even a tent, maybe just a bivy sack or a hammock, especially being in a tropical climate. And then instead of hanging out in the city, I would cut out to the bush. I would go deep into the jungle and build like a little homestead, probably starting out with the shack with the roof made out of a tarp. And then eventually I'd make a kitchen, an area for cooking, start collecting cooking utensils and stuff like that, and then set up hygiene and an outhouse and way to get water with the creek and be able to maintain, cleanliness, or wash in the creek or a waterfall, or then eventually get water jugs and then start getting city water and then washing myself and then buy water that's drinkable, like reverse osmosis, deionized or distilled water. Uh, and then, start building myself up. So then when I can hygiene and clean myself and have a way to clean my clothes, I can then get a job. And then once I have that job, I can work that long enough to get a car. And then once I get the car, I can get a real job. And after working that real job long enough, I could then get a place to stay long term. Or the car, I could then live in the car and have kind of van life out of my car, preferably like a Toyota Prius. So it's very low burn rate. So with the gas mileage, you barely need to put any fuel in it. And then I would, get a stable place to live, better kitchen, and then, build up savings, climb out of debt, and work my way back up in society, start functioning, start making connections in the community, start reaching out to other healers, find healing centers that I can be part of, and start, get to the point where I can get a computer so that I can have global reach. And I was thinking, oh, wait a second, that's exactly what I did. I showed up after a terribly tragic, amazing adventure in Australia. I was absolutely heartbroken. The Big Island snatched me up and wouldn't let me go until I worked on my heart, and did a lot of healing. And by the time I was done, I was a whole different person. The island taught me fierceness. The island taught me ruggedness. Mexico taught me to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. That was the lesson of Mexico City, and almost dying quite a few times there. But I really, by the time I left Australia, I was heartbroken. I had only gotten to see my brand new son a few times, and it killed me to get that ripped away. I had built a life, actually repeatedly, in Australia. It's really not as hard as you think. And if you are at all clever, at all intelligent, you can, with no resources, start over. And so that's what I was thinking about on my next walkabout coming up. I was like, well, I'd like to have a lot bigger savings, and I'd like to buy a camper van instead of just going out in the Prius, so I'm more comfortable. And then I'm like, I don't need it. I'm always taken care of. No matter where I go, what I do, I'm always taken care of. Even if I near die or actually die, I always come back and I'm always fine. And then the people that need me find me. The people that can help me find me. And just amazing opportunities open up. How many watchers do we have? 8 watchers. Thanks for watching, everybody. So no matter what it was, I always found the help I needed. I always found the people that needed help. I always am in exactly the right spot at the right time. I have been a first responder in a lot of situations, in spiritual situations and physical situations. I have seen car wrecks, and I've yanked some people out and applied combat first aid until the actual paramedics could arrive. And always, I was in the right place at the right time. Things could have gone a lot worse if I wasn't there with my combat medic training. It's always a wild time. There was one time I was on my way. It was a late evening. I think I had finished work, and one of my favorite places on the Big Island was the hot ponds. It was down in Pohiki, and I can't remember the name of the park now. Wow. They close the gates at night, and there's a security guard there, but you're still allowed to go there. You just aren't allowed to drive into the park. So you park out on the street and you walk in, and I had my little bag slung with some snacks and water. definitely water, because it was almost like a sweat lodge experience. You're in this salt water that's volcanically heated, so it's really hot and you dehydrate, but it creates this flushing. It cleanses your body. It gets rid of the pain. It melts the pain away. It's really amazing. I just one of my favorite places on the Big Island. So I just was in my trunks and I had, I think, pluggers on or flip flops, slippers, depending on what you call them, and which part of the world you're in. And I'm just kind of walking down underneath the full moon. Then all of a sudden, I hear this giant crash, and I'm like, oh no, there's a security guard. That's what she's getting paid to do. Then my intuition said, no, 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 this is over her pay grade. I'm like, oh shit. So I turn around and I book it. It was really bad. And I had this really eerie feeling. I'm like, okay, something's not right. Something's not copacetic here. So I run down there, and it turned out a guy ran into the gate. It was a full moon, so they didn't have flashlights or anything, and they were clipping along. It was a downhill. So from the farm they were coming downhill, and it continued straight into the gate. It would have been through the gate if the gate wasn't closed, but the hill ended at the gate, and it was pretty invisible because it was that dark. Well, the guy ran into it, flipped over the handlebars, and split his knee open down to the bone. So I ran, kind of grabbed my flashlight out of my bag, put it on, and I'm jumped into combat mode. And I'm like, okay, what's going on here? And his knee was split down to the bone. I'm like, okay, told his friend to kind of wait there, make sure he didn't go into shock. Ran, grabbed some supplies. I got Quick Clot. I don't think I had my IFAC, like individual first aid kit, like combat gauze, pressure dressings, all that fun jazz. I don't think I had any of that. I just had Quick Clot. For me, if I get cut, what I'll do, I'll just like take the cut. If it's bleeding really bad, I'll put some Quick Clot on it. That'll stop the bleeding. Close it up, put super glue, and I'm good to go. If it's really bad, maybe I'll put some duct tape on it. But it's. I've gotten so beat up along the way. It's like, meh, oh well. Is the limb still attached? I'm good. Like, I continued to do martial arts with a broken foot for months and didn't even realize it was broken. And the instructor like, oh, it's a bone bruise. I'm like, I don't know what that is. It sounds highly unlikely, but okay, cool. Let's just keep going. Months later, I finally got an x-ray, and yep, the foot was broken. So I got my Quick Clot, I got shop towels that I had in my car, and electrical tape. It was in my toolkit. And I'm like, okay, this is going to have to do. So I made a makeshift pressure dressing after I put the Quick Clot on it and put the pressure dressing on it. EMS shows up, and they're like, oh, it's not that bad. I don't even see any blood coming out. And then they open it up, and his knee is just butterflied open. And they're like, whoa, whoa. It was actually quite amusing. They had no idea when they pulled off the dressing that it would be that bad and not be squirting blood everywhere. That was an interesting evening, and like probably over an hour or hours later, because it took them a long time to come and find us. And then I finally went to the hot ponds, which it was just an amazing place. You'd go out there, and I would be in just floating. It was almost like a deprivation tank. You just float in the water, and I'd be looking up at the stars, and it would be just warm and relaxing. You'd hear the sound of the ocean. The palm trees would be swaying. Sometimes it would be a full moon or just bright stars, and it was just this magical experience. It was one of my favorite places, one of my favorite Hawaiian experiences. I've been to a lot of places on the Big Island and all the islands, and it was all amazing. But at night, that was the one place I'd go, the hot ponds. Now, granted, that was on the east side of the island. So the Puna side, Hilo side. When I was up in the north part of the island, I'd go to these cow pastures that had this cliff, and you just overlook it. And a lot of us in the group that were our age and kind of the spiritual group, we'd just go down there and hang out. And it was just such a beautiful experience down there. Just powerful, raw, sheer power of the ocean. Uh, but I'm always in the right place at the right time. It's really interesting. And I've never had to worry about things. Doors would close and other doors would open up, and I worked my way from the ground up multiple times. I just going from the Australian experience, I had $20 in my pocket. I had enough on my credit card to get a cell phone plan, and that was it. I lived off the land. There was a few places where I could get food. I made connections at Cinderland. That's where I started my journey. My friend said, "Go to Cinderland. You'll make connections. You won't have to be there too long." And it was kind of this magical other world. You just wouldn't even expect people would be living that way. There was basically buildings made out of a tarp, and then they'd have maybe like a bunk room set up with screens around them, or like a kitchen, and they'd have just kind of a rock floor that was created. And it was just a magical otherworld feel. Next to that was Yana's, and she was this really cool old French lady, and she had built this magical, mystical fairyland. The lines were really blurred from the indoors to the outdoors. It was, again, kind of just a roof. It might have been even made out of a tarp. And it looked like what a fairy would live in. You think fairy and, like the most romantic, mystical vision of that. And the stove was built into these like rock formations made with cement and rocks and shells. And there's just all kinds of whimsical flowers and vines and lights. And it was just a magical experience. So I was at Cinderland a couple days, and it was a little bit too boisterous or chaotic for me. All night parties, and they partied hard, and I was not really in that. And I mean, some of the people were great. Some of the people were interesting, very, very interesting. I don't know. Some of them put on this whole separate persona. If anybody's ever seen The Love Guru, there's a guy that called himself the Wizard, and he looked identical to the Love Guru with Mike Myers in it. It was, people gave themselves the freedom to recreate a different version and just play. It was such an amazing experience. After 2 nights, I made connections with a friend who had a place to stay, and he's leaving the island, and asked me if I could house it for him. I said, sure. And then he's like, well, could you watch my car for me too? Yes, please. So in 2 days, I had a place to stay and a car. Now, the place to stay, the house he wanted me to house it for, was like a little kid's tree house that had never been completed. At most, there was 3 walls, and it was open to the mosquitoes of the Puna jungle. It was an interesting experience. No running water, no toilets. I ended up on the property next door where there is an abandoned bus, which was kind of the same property. Basically, people squatting on people's land for squatting for squatters, squatting for squatters. So I don't know who actually owned the land, but the people that were in charge of the land were definitely not the people that originally owned it or paid for it. But there was a bus, and it was absolutely disgusting. It was just, it stunk. It was full of rotting stuff. Cleaned it out and made myself a nice home in the jungle. I got some supplies along the way, and I started working and could afford a little bit more and a little bit more. And I had this amazing camp. It was out in the middle of the jungle, and I'd do the yard work in the nude. I would just spend days and almost weeks, well, basically anytime I was on the land, I was just at one with nature. I was out in the nude, and nobody would ever see me because I was out in the middle of the jungle. It was amazing. I had a sickle, and I'd kind of clean up and mow the area with it. There was kava growing all around me, so that was an amazing experience. Wild kava growing in Hawaii all around me. There was avocado trees, guava trees, papayas, just it was like living in the Garden of Eden. It was such an amazing experience, and I learned abundance comes in more forms than just money. And so then eventually I made connections, and a friend of mine that I met, he asked me, I was just going, okay, I'm going to run out of money, and I am not going to be able to put gas in this car, and I'm not going to be able to get to work. I need to go into reception. I had no reception, no electronics, no electricity. It was amazing. I was in this metal Faraday cage of a bus where there was no reception, and even outside, until you drove miles out of the jungle, there was no reception. So finally, I got back to reception, and I got a text from my friend Arthur. And he said, hey, are you looking for work? And I said, yes, please. So I started working for him, doing painting and kind of random handyman stuff. And through that, I was able to build up some savings. And then it was about time to give the car back. I had to go pick up my friend from the airport on the Kona side. So I'm like, well, before I have to give the car up, let me do a walkabout, go explore the Hawaiian Islands. I had gone north to drop him off to the airport. Then I circled back around south and went through South Point and stopped at Two Step and went snorkeling down by Captain Cook. Absolutely beautiful. That's originally kind of the destination I had planned. I'm going to go to Kona or South of Kona. However, when I got over the saddle road, the road splits. And you can go south or north. And I had this really strong urge to go north. And I'm like, well, let's see what north is. It looks cool. The road just kind of goes north until it stops at the valleys, Pololu Valley. And I didn't even really know that at the time. I'm just like, I'm really strongly feeling north. And then it was like really late at night. I'm like, okay, I need to find a place to camp. And I'm looking, and I didn't realize that it's pretty much free camping anywhere by the ocean. So I was looking for a hidden place or somewhere that I could kind of stealth camp. So eventually I found a beach and set up camp there, woke up with the crack of dawn. Anytime I'm sleeping outdoors, I always am in sync with nature. In Australia, I'd be up before the kookaburras started laughing. In Hawaii, I'd be up before the roosters. I'd be up to watch the stars start to disappear and fade as the sun started to come up. And that particular morning on that beach, I watched the sunset or the sunrise behind me, the moon set into the ocean. And right as that event was happening, I was watching thunderstorms over Maui turning into rainbows. And that was the first time since flying in that I had seen Maui. And I didn't know that you could see it from that island. And it just blew my mind. And this guy comes up to me. He walks up behind me. Almost looked like Seth from Pineapple Express. Sounded the same, looked the same, had the same energy. Cool guy. He walks up, and I'm like, uh-oh, am I not allowed? Am I in trouble for camping out here? And he walks up to me and he goes, that was beautiful, wasn't it? Yeah, it was. Okay. So, I could tell he just was being friendly. And he asked what I did and, what I was doing here. And I told him that I did healing. And he goes, really? You need to live in Hawaii. Hawaii is where you need to be. So I'm like, well, I'm open into it. I don't know how it's going to happen. So I went up I just continued as far as the road would go up to Pololu Valley. And I ran into this guy who was a cyclist and seemed like a pretty cool guy. I asked him to take a picture of me with my camera. He looks at the camera and goes, oh, that's a really nice camera. My partner has the same one. She does photography. I'm like, oh, well, that's cool. So we got talking. He got some pictures for me. My friend Sydney, really cool guy. He is 60 and still doing Ironmans. Yes, Ironmans. Biking 100 and some odd miles, and I forget, I can't remember right now, but running a marathon, biking, and swimming. Incredible, man. He is very powerful. And it's up here. It's when you give up in your mind, that's when you start to age, and he has not given up. Really just amazing guy. Sydney Brito. If you're looking for a personal trainer, highly suggest him. He's an amazing guy. So I was like, oh, thanks for the pictures. Went to walk down, and he goes, hey, if you wait a minute, my friend's going to be here. We could all walk down together. And I said, sure. So then we started talking and went down there. He actually kind of did like a little personal training session for us all, and it was really cool. Hung out and chatted and met his friend Peter, another great guy. And we were almost to the top of the canyon again, walking out. And he said, hey, there's an extra bed in the Airbnb. Would you like to stay? I'm like, yes, please. So I picked him up. I said, oh, I got to go pick up the guy from the airport, but I'll come back. So I didn't have much with me. I had a pack with maybe a couple extra sets of clothes and hygiene stuff and not much. So I went and picked him up from the airport. And then from the airport, I said, hey, you guys should go check out Pololu. Would you mind dropping me off? Well, that was an interesting situation. My skin was crawling. He picked up 2 girls from the mainland and brought them back to Hawaii. And I was so uncomfortable. I'm like, okay, somebody's got something next level wrong with them. So through light conversation, we start talking about things. And the one girl, she talked about her childhood and how she was ritualistically, satanically raped from the time she was an infant. I'm like, whoa, okay, there's the problem right there. So I didn't want to tell her, you are possessed. We need to do something about that. I'm like, do you feel like that's still with you? Yes. Do you feel like something is around or on you? Yes. Can I help you? Yes. Okay. So we get to the Airbnb. We stop the car. Like, okay, hop out. I was just assuming this would be a quick yank and we're done, right? Oh, no. Oh, no, no, no. I start pulling this thing off, and she starts screaming bloody murder. I'm like, okay, everybody back in the car. Let's go. So we stopped next to a cow pasture. It was a full moon. And just absolutely gorgeous. Beautiful night. So, okay, let's all get out of the car. Oh, excuse me. Past my bedtime. So everybody out of the car. Let's work on this. So as soon as she got out there, I started working on her again, screaming bloody murder. This thing starts screaming obscenities at me, and wishing all these curses upon my family, and saying to do all kinds of nasty things to them. I'm like, yeah, no, you lost. What's with the theatrics? You're done. You're leaving. And they're like, no, the darkness will be victorious over the light. No, you've lost. Darkness overall has lost. It's over. Why are you doing this? So I actually got to have a conversation with this dark entity, basically a demon. Kind of a backstory on this. There's different levels of possession and attachment. So you can just get like a hitchhiker, like at the bar. Say some alcoholic gets, a little bit too drunk, and they pick up an alcoholic spirit that wants to live vicariously through someone else. It's not really a harmful spirit, but it will drain them. It will make them feel very tired. It will encourage them to drink more. So that's kind of like, a hitchhiker. Then you have the levels of attachment and possession. So you might have a backseat driver. There might be someone in the passenger seat, barking at the driver to, do things. That's like the voices in my head, the voices in my, yeah. So that the passenger might be yelling at you, okay, or they can be driving. At that point in time, the person can still grab the wheel and have some control, but the entity is driving. So those people that are like, oh, they're not the same person that they used to be. They're burned out from drugs or whatever have you. That's because the entity's driving, or the entity's driving and the person's roofied and thrown in the trunk. Well, during this clearing, that was the case. The person was roofied, thrown in the trunk, and the entity was driving. So that gave a really unique perspective. Through intuition and previous experience, I kind of had assumed that the entities weren't moving on, not because they still felt like they had to fight the fight. It was because they had, they were afraid to move into the light. They live in a completely egoic experience. And when they're living in ego, they even if it's a really bad situation, the ego knows the parameters and how to keep that person safe during that situation. Well, over there it might be a whole lot better, but the ego doesn't know or understand how to deal with that. So the ego will say, no, stay here. I know how to protect you through this. Well, that's where they're at. All they know is fear, anger, and hate. They're afraid to move into light and love. And more than that, it did not know that it was a loved creation of the Creator. It had never known that, or at least that I could remember. So I went through and actually did a healing session for this dark entity or demon and cleared a lot of the limiting beliefs it had. And when it was, I had cleared enough and I felt like, okay, are you ready to move on? Yes. Are you ready to go into the light and be healed? Yes. So I called in my light team, the angels, and opened up a portal for it, sent it back home to be back to the Creator, to be reprogrammed, close the portal, and everybody looks at me like just another day at the office. So that was interesting. And they tried to frame it in a very Christian perspective, and I'm like, okay, whatever you want to think, but that was interesting. So got back to the Airbnb and ended up getting offered a job within a few days, getting offered a place to stay once they had left the Airbnb and someone else came in. They had an extra room and I ended up staying on and working. Then I started doing the Javi's Farmer Market and had a healing booth set up. And that really, a lot of people saw that and it sent a good example for the community. A lot of people realized what was possible then. And a lot of people stepped into their potential. So I built this amazing life for myself in Javi with a backpack. I had a backpack and a couple sets of clothes, and I ended up staying there for a month. And then I was able to go back and get my stuff and kind of move it back over to Javi. And the room I was staying in was almost, you walk through a closet and then turn down turn down a little hallway, and then there's this kind of hidden door, and it was this room that was completely insulated. Anyone could look at it and not know it was there. And it was the winter time. It was very windy, and sometimes it would be very rainy. I had this thing, it was so insulated. I would forget that I was in Hawaii. And then energetically it was insulated. And it wasn't Hawaii at that point in time. I was in my own little null space, my own little void. I wasn't in Hawaii. I wasn't on this planet. I wasn't anywhere except my energy bubble that I created. And it was very healing. It was very warm, very cozy. I know in Hawaii, you're like, what? Warm? It was a little bit chilly at that point in time. There was 40-mile-an-hour sustained winds, stronger gusts. For a few weeks there, it was just rainy and almost hurricane-like. And it was nice. I just had this little insulated bubble, then I had a full kitchen I had use of, and I had carved out another nice life there. And then I eventually went back to the other side right as the scamdemic hit, and that whole town went, just a whole bunch of crazy when that struck. And then went back to the east side of the island and avoided all the lockdowns and everything, and we just lived life like normal in the jungle, and sweat lodges, ecstatic dances. Everybody ignored the lockdown. Everybody refused to wear masks. Nobody cared, because we were living life and it didn't matter. We didn't give into the fear. We didn't give into the sensationalism, and we were all fine. Not one person died. Not one person even got sick. Uh, so we lived life that way for a while and built another life and got into other communities and did healing and hosted events, and it was just amazing. And I made really amazing spiritual connections. Um, so sometimes rock bottom is just that sturdy place to build a foundation. You clean out everything you don't need. You clean out the people you don't need. You clean out the possessions you don't need. You clean out everything that doesn't serve you, and you get a chance to start over and fresh. Now, granted, if you're married with kids and have a house and have a career, it's really hard to change that. However, if you're lucky enough to have that perfect gift of nothing that I had, I got to create from chaos. Stability, it's really hard to change that course because you're on this kind of one-way street. You have a career which you're very comfortable in, which you need to pay for your house payment and car payment, which also has you locked in. So if you want to drop everything and go to the other side of the world, unless you just walk away from it all, it takes a lot to change your momentum and go in a different direction. Whereas I live from this beautiful place of chaos oftentimes, where most people perceive it as instability. However, for me, it's great opportunity and possibilities. I am always provided for. I can get myself out of any situation that arises. In most of my travels, I have been my own 911. I have taken care of myself. I have rendered first aid to myself. I've stopped myself from dying. I've died and come back. So it's I'm here in front of you alive. So it's really amazing, and that was something I was meditating on today. Is okay, why am I so hesitant to get out on the road? And it's I'm afraid I'm going to hit a rock bottom again. Well, hasn't stopped me in the past. I have, there's this concept of, okay, I need to have more. Oh, things have to be perfect. I'm going to wait till this. I'm going to wait till that. I'm going to wait till that. And then it just never happens. You miss your window of opportunity and it's gone. So right now I have this amazing window of opportunity and I'm going to take it. I'm wrapping up my fares and we will see where the open road takes me. I am excited about what is possibly going to come. Is there anybody watching? Throw up any comments if you have any. I'd love to get the interaction. I'd love to field any questions you have. So I have my car. I'm building it out. I'm kind of modifying it for this long road trip and walkabout. Absolutely love the Toyota Prius. It is like the most fuel efficient camper you could imagine. The back seats fold down, the front seats push forward. It's possible to fit a twin mattress in the back of a Toyota Prius. Believe it or not, I can comfortably sleep in my Toyota Prius. Right now I'm taking out the back seats and I'm building a lockbox so I can lock all my stuff up, have extra storage. I don't need the seats in the back, so I can just put everything in that little lockbox and have my little camper and just travel around the country. I'm working on setting up events. So if you are anywhere and you'd like to set up a class, set up an event, a healing event, book a session with me, get a hold of me. I will, yeah, I'm open to driving. Have healing, will travel. Old TV show. Not modified. It was Have Gun, Will Travel. It was the guy was a mercenary. But yeah, as far as me, Have Healing, Will Travel. Yeah, get a hold of me. I'm building teams and going to have people help me when I'm out on the road, running my tech for me, handling some of my techie type stuff, and going to set up events. So I am going to wrap it up because I am rather tired. And that pretty much concludes my story. So don't be afraid of hitting rock bottom. Don't be afraid of starting over. Don't be afraid of losing people in your life. Don't be afraid of losing your possessions. If you're clever, if you put hard work in, if you are willing to put that energy into creating something beautiful, the phoenix is a valid way of healing. Watching everything burn to ashes and then rise again from those ashes. I've done it over and over and over again. I sit in front of you as a completely different person than I used to be. Very different. Oh, thanks for watching. Uh, okay, Vanessa. Vanessa is my good friend. I am going to stop and visit her and do some healing and meet a lot of people in that area. So I'm really excited about heading down to New Mexico. Uh, she's just got this really golden heart and such a wonderful person. Uh, yeah, I have lots of friends out west that I'm just gonna go and walk about and see where I end up. And if there's any friends in the region, I'll stop by, do healing, hopefully set up some classes along the way. You are very welcome, Vanessa. You are such an amazing person with an amazing heart. Uh, so I'm excited to. I have some healings along the way, and I don't want to talk too much about them yet because don't make it significant, but and don't get attached to the outcomes. But I'm really hoping to see amazing things happen along the road, and I really feel like this is going to be the next level or leveling up. I am meeting some very powerful people as I head out west. So we will see what happens. Hopefully, I'll get some of them on the webcast very soon and either out with them out in the field or at least remotely before I head out there. And we'll see where that takes us. Any other comments? Okay, well, I guess I'm going to call it a night. I thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. And just don't give up. You're worth it. Try your hardest. Put the effort in, invest in yourself, never give up. Even rock bottom is a great place to start. No matter what the circumstances are that got you there, you can always rebuild your life. You can do it. I did it. No resources, worked my way up. It's very possible. So let's see. Well, thank you all for watching. Aloha, love and light to you all. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode of Ascension Cast.
We hope you enjoyed this video session. Please support the Infinite Love Movement by liking, sharing, and subscribing to our channel. Visit theinfinitelovemovement.org to sign up for healing sessions, classes, and events with Brian. Find your